We last left our party at the edge of the Grung village, and today we're going to tell you what happened in the Grung village. Let's dig in. Alright, let's talk about what went well. The first thing I really want to hit home is my players were creative, and I loved it. It was awesome. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. They used some of the environment around them in fighting off the Grung, and they did things that I wasn't expecting, which, was pretty normal in D&D, but it was awesome. I loved it. Next, they all seemed to enjoy the combat that we had and seemed to be pretty engaged the entire time, which was fun. They were also motivated to save the prisoners, which was good. I didn't have to pull strings or anything like that to make them more engaged in the encounters that they were in. So it was a lot of fun. What could be better? I super over-prepared. So in the first session, I felt like they went through a whole bunch of extra stuff. And in this one, they literally just stayed in the Grung village. That was pretty much it. So I over-prepared so much. For the next session, I'm just going to prepare the Festival of Merit, and that's it. Because I don't think we're going to have time for anything else. It's interesting to see the way that the party played. And the next thing is, I felt like the combat could have been a little bit more challenging, and I'm going to incorporate that a little bit more going forward. So I'm going to give the guys a little bit of XP, and maybe add some extra abilities. They handled the Grung pretty well. We had one player who, when they ran into the shaman, fell unconscious. But other than that, I mean, they took some hits and things, but I feel like it could have been a little bit more challenging. We could have done a little bit more damage. So we'll think about that going forward. Ideas I have for the future. A bunch of these we still haven't run into yet, but we will. So I've just added or kept them here. The first is the dance competition for the festival. We talked about that in our prep video. I'll put a link for that in the card above. We also have an interaction between Nell and the gang we're planning on doing, and that'll probably be next session for sure. So I want to give Iris an interaction from her warlock patron, and I'm planning on doing this probably in the Emerald Grotto in the race, because I feel like the book doesn't do a great job of giving the party a reason to go and find the jewel of the 3 prayers. So her patron is the Elixian Aboleth, which you can find later on in the book, who's pretending to be the Moonweaver. So this whole thing has to do with the Moonweaver and whatnot. So I think we're going to have a vision or some sort of compelling force from her patron telling her she needs to go up into this little passageway, because I feel like, again, the book doesn't do a great job of tempting the characters into doing this. Chozen, I think, we talked about this, I think, in the last one, but Chozen could meet a survivor from his shipwreck in Ank'Harel. Jimmy, I want to add an encounter where he has to test his morals. So far, he's been very, very strict and loyal to his morals. I want somewhere where he has to test that a little bit. I'm not sure exactly where that'll be. And then Dmitri, I want to run into the person he fought. So when he was recruited by Pequeña, who was fighting someone at a tavern, and I want him to run into that person and just see what happens. Something small and simple. My player hasn't had a great opportunity yet in real life to flesh out their backstory, just they've been busy, which is great and fine. So something fun, throw something Dimitri's way. So let's talk about what's happened. And I'm actually going to pull open Owlbear Rodeo, which is where we ran the encounter for the Grung village. And it all took place in the Grung village. So here in Owlbear Rodeo, the reason I use this is because it's pretty simple and straightforward. You literally just import your map. It does a really good job, and then you can add some quick fog of war for your players. So I pull open this on my screen, which has got everything, and then on the TV that we used to play on, I just open an incognito window and have them see this. So when these areas that are grayed out here, it's literally dark for them and they can't see that. And I'll use this probably going forward because it worked out really well. And then I can come in on my screen and just toggle the fog of war, and they can see what's inside. It worked out really, really well. Owlbear Rodeo, highly suggested. It's free. Owlbear.rodeo. I'll provide a link for that in the description below. It's free. It's easy to use. Super, it's like plug and play. Love it for in-person if you've got some sort of digital screen. So there were 2 Grung guards positioned here. That's the 2 eyes that the party saw at the end of their last session. And they rolled really well on their stealth checks, so they were able to sneak in and get a sneak attack on the 2 guards that were positioned down in here in this area. And they handled them pretty well. It took a couple of rounds, but they were able to take them out. One of the Grung guards that was stationed here was the one that ran away during their ambush, and as a result of him being able to run away, the city itself, the Grung little village here, was able to be alerted, and nobody else was surprised during their attack rounds. After the party took out the 2 guards, they were able to see the village. So the first thing that they did, actually, is the party split. A couple of them went this way, and a couple went this way, and they went straight to the center island in here, and they wanted to know what was going on. So we described that the bonfire here was still not like full force, but there was still some embers and it was still burning a little. And then this was a statue of a giant Grung, and it had some offerings and whatnot that were there. Nothing super awesome. They all wanted to know what was there, the entire party, but nothing super cool or amazing, just some random odds and ends and trinkets that the Grung had found and were offering up to their deity, the Great Grand Grung. So after they kind of spent a few seconds here, not very long, Nell decided she wanted to come this way and check out the bunk house. So she opened the door and was immediately shot in the face by the 4 Grung that were in here. And so we had them roll initiative and we fought. It went pretty well. A couple of them had made constitution saves. So one of the things I added is they had some poison darts. When they were hit by a poison dart, they had to roll a constitution save, a DC 12, I think I had. If they failed, I just had them take on one of the effects of the poison, the Grung poison vials. And there's links for those magic item descriptions. So 2 of them failed, and they both happened to be blue, I think. Blue. So they were just screaming at the beginning of ending of turn, which added to the fact that none of the rest of the village was surprised. They were still able to act, but they were just screaming as they did so. So they handled these 4 pretty well. It was a big giant funnel here, so it was difficult for everyone to get attacks in, and there were cover advantages and whatnot, but eventually the 4 Grung in here were taken out. The next step is they went and actually planned this next one. So Chozen, our bugbear barbarian, was going to open the door, and they had, I think, Dmitri, our gnome fighter, here, and then Jimmy and Nell were up in this area, and I can't remember where Iris, our warlock, was. I can't remember if she's over here or over here, but they decided they were going to slam the door open and kind of plan an ambush of sorts here. So things started going as planned. Over here, they opened the door, the Grung started funneling out, and they did a pretty decent amount of damage for about a round or 2, and then I added another element to the battle. The 2 guards that were stationed here at the prison had rolled really well on their stealth checks. So about round 2 or 3, I had these 2 enter the fray, and Jimmy and Iris were here shooting long-ranged attacks and had kind of been untouched. So I had these 2 come this way and start throwing darts at Jimmy and at Nell, got them some damage, and Jimmy turned around and used his thorn whip and pulled one of them into the water. Nell decided she wanted to come over here and use the fire, and she lit one of her arrows on fire and shot the Grung, who then was pulled eventually into the water. As a result of her creativity, I gave her an extra D4 fire damage on her arrow when it hit, which was kind of fun. They really liked it. When they do things like that are creative and using the environment around them, I really like to reward my players because to me that's fun and interesting. So her bending over and trying to light her arrow on fire, yeah, of course that works. That's fun. That's exciting. And then adding a little bit of a damage boost for her. It's only a D4. It's not going to be like game changing or anything like that, but it makes the player feel like their actions were rewarded. And they were. So eventually that was taken care of. The party decided that they wanted to check out the 2 buildings up north and do the exact same thing they did down here. So they assumed that there were Grung in this building and in this building. And they did the same thing. Iris opened the door this time or knocked on the door because the door was locked. This is a little shack where the fishermen who used to live here had set up a bunch of their supplies. So they set it up, knock on the door, door's locked, nothing happens for a while. Eventually, Chozen runs up and just breaks it with his axe, and then they find in here the bag of holding. There's a whole bunch of fishing supplies as well that they found, and so the party was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. So they try this next one. The door is locked again, and they knock, and this time on the other end, they hear some very frail voices responding, hello, hello, who is it, hello? And at this point, the party realizes this is probably where the prisoners are kept. So they break open the door, Chozen breaks open the door, they get in there, and we start role-playing. At first, the prisoners are pretty timid and scared of the party because they've been treated pretty poorly by the Grung while they were here, pretty much as slaves. The party starts mentioning that they were sent here by Jigow elders and that Zarr, their friend, had sent them, and they wanted to know how many people were here they needed to rescue, and so on and so forth. So after a little bit of role play, we calmed down the prisoners, and they got a little bit of information about the Grung and what had happened here. The prisoners are shackled to the wall. They tell the prisoners, hang on tight here, we're going to take care of the rest of the Grung village, and then we'll come back and save you. So Chozen rips actually their shackles off of the wall, gives them a little bit of freedom, and they are staying here for the rest of the time. The party at this time decides that they need to figure out a game plan for the rest. As they're talking back and forth, Nell makes her way back down to the fire, lights a couple of arrows, and starts shooting the building, lighting them on fire. So I give them a round or 2 of her flinging arrows, the party giving themselves a quick chance to get positioned before Grung start fleeing out of the buildings, right? It doesn't take long. They're not asleep for them to start fleeing out of the buildings. So there were poison snakes in here that just didn't make it. The Grung shaman came out, the Grung elite warrior, who is the chieftain of the Grung, and I think I had 2 or 3 Grung come out up here, and the others managed to burn to death. So they all came out, a big battle ensued. We had 2 people in here. Jimmy and Nell were here. Iris was over here, and then we had our melee people, Chozen the barbarian, and Dmitri, our fighter, in this area. So eventually the Grung Shaman, who was using the Grung Wilding stat block, cast Spike Growth on this entire area, which caused Jimmy and Nell to both take a decent amount of damage as they moved about. And eventually Nell fell unconscious at the very edge of this, so she was able to be revived and fine. So big fight goes on up over here. Chozen gets really close, like within 1 HP of going down, even when he's raging. And eventually the Grung are taken care of. After the fight was finished, they started to look for loot, right? Pretty common thing. Most of this building had burned down by the time the war was over. This one had a decent amount of damage as well. So Nell and Jimmy went down to this one to search for goodies. Dmitri and Iris went through here, and they found a handful of things that were just in there, like potion of healing, I think. And then down here I gave them 5 Grung poison darts, and then 5 Grung poison vials. And stat blocks for all those will be in the description below. There's custom items. And up here, they found a little bit of gold and then just some random trinkets, as well as the keys to unlock the prisoners' shackles here. So they did all that, took care of the prisoners. They went down into this building here, blocked up the door, and slept for the night. They had them roll random encounters. They ended up not having anything happen. After they slept, they made their way back to Jigow. It was a pretty uneventful journey. There were just more people coming their way from other areas into Jigow for the festival that's starting here in the next day or so. So as they got into the town, they went straight to the Kryn Dynasty outpost, where the drow told them the elders weren't meeting at the time, but Elder Ushru asked if they did return to go and visit him, so the party went and visited him. As they got to Elder Ushru's house, Elder Ushru took the prisoners and took care of them, gave them meals and whatever else through one of his servants, while in their main sitting area, the rest of the party talked. And they talked about, Elder Ushru gave them instructions about what events were coming up in the Festival of Merits, and each party member decided what they were going to do, and then he let them know that there were a couple of team events, as well as the final race. So we did a little bit of a strategy session there, where they talked amongst themselves and decided who was going to do what. He paid them their 50 gold apiece for rescuing the hostages, and then he gave them each a little team symbol. And it's like a buff on Survivor, it's basically how I described it. And there's it's teal, and then the symbol of the Norgab horde is an orc, basically just flexing because to them, strength is super important. Kind of in passing, as they were about to head out the door, he said, "Hey, by the way, I was acting a little bit strange today when I stopped by. She's my daughter. Will you guys go stop by the Unbroken Tuskian?" And that is where we ended because we were out of time. Anyway, it worked out really well. Next time we're going to jump right into helping out Agath. So that's pretty much all that happened. Exciting stuff. Again, I'm super excited for the players I have. They're awesome. So much fun. If you enjoyed this video, please let me know in the comments section below what you enjoyed, what you're looking forward to. Don't forget to give me a like and subscribe, and we'll catch you in the next one.